Hi, I'm Christian Brindle with Christian Brindle Insurance Services.
And I'm Glenn Shelton with Lead Heroes and Hire Heroes.
And this is Taco
Taco
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Let's talk about insurance. This is a show all about growing your business as an insurance agent and bringing you up-to-date marketing trends. We have great guests.
We have sales experts. We'll talk about all things pertaining to senior insurance and other lines of insurance. We're trying to help you grow your business, and we are excited that you are here to watch our content.
If you enjoy this episode, make sure to like the episode. Subscribe to any platform that you enjoy to listen on. Make sure to leave a 5-star review if it allows it, and we'll see you on the episode.
We'll see you in there.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another edition of Taco Tuesday. Let's talk about insurance. I'm joined with my co-host, Glenn Shelton. I'm Christian Brindle, and we have another dynamite episode, just like those guns, by the way. Like, I didn't realize we were running a gun show today.
Didn't know I was allowed to bring these guns.
Yeah.
We're in the 90s now with our episode count, aren't we?
Wow. I feel very Fresh Prince of Bel-Airish.
Oh my gosh.
I apologize to the audience about that one.
Yeah, please, dude. That was the worst pun I've ever. I was like, what in the world? No.
Mr. Shelton, what
Yes.
are we talking about today? What's on the docket?
Today we have it's kind of one of those topics, you guys, that's as old as time here in the Medicare, I guess rather the senior insurance space. There's a group of products that classify as senior insurance. I'd say cancer insurance, Medicare, final expense. What would you say are some other quote unquote senior insurance focused products?
Maybe annuities. Maybe you could throw annuities in there.
That's a good one. Hospital indemnity,
long-term care.
So there's these niche insurance products that almost exclusively focus on the senior insurance market. And obviously, cross-selling is a great option. Being able to sell one line of insurance and then sell them something else, increases retention of that client, increases your commissions, you're helping them solve more problems, and you're using your same insurance license. You're not having to really change gears too much. It all falls really within your wheelhouse as an agent. The question is, which line of insurance do you start with? And then which line of insurance do you cross-sell? Do you cross-sell insurance at all? Or do you refer the cross-sell to another agent? Because you're going to be an expert and you're going to stay in your lane. That, you guys, is the topic today that Christian and I will be talking about. I do have a few thoughts about this.
Go.
Yeah. Well, one theory that I've never seen really happen is I've always been fascinated by the idea that an agent could exclusively focus on an ancillary product that no one else focuses on, like cancer insurance. How many insurance agents do you guys know where their primary business is cancer insurance?
I maybe know 2 that I've ever met.
I don't think
Maybe.
I've personally met. I've heard stories. I've heard stories. I don't think I've ever personally met an agent who said, "Hi, I'm a cancer insurance agent." Yeah, like I said, like their card, right? Their card it's like Christian Brindle, cancer insurance specialist. Now that sounds outlandish when I say it out loud. It sounds crazy. But I love the idea that you're leading with a product that most people don't, because it changes your audience. You're one Medicare agent in a sea of Medicare agents, but you could be the only cancer insurance agent that prospect will ever talk to. So I love the idea of picking like an ancillary to cross-sell the Medicare or to cross-sell the final expense. I feel like that's a real backdoor move. I also kind of honestly agree with the idea that you pick one product and you really don't sell anything else. the best producers in the world that I know, they're not great cross sellers, right? I mean, they're not writing 4 different lines of insurance on every other app. They're literally doing almost zero cross selling, and they're just hammering out their main line of insurance, whether that's final expense, whether that's MedSup, Medicare Advantage, whatever it is. Some of the best producers I know operate under that mindset. So what do you think?
Yeah. So
insurance, Christian,
there's a lot there. There is a lot there.
There's a lot.
So I think there's one guy that I met ever that there's 2, but the other guy I didn't get to know him really well. It was like very short conversation. This guy I had a really long conversation with. I did a seminar last year locally for agents. Okay. This guy shows up. He was one of the people that showed up, and had a long conversation with him after the fact. And this guy was a captive agent for a cancer insurance company. I can't even remember the name of the company. It was one I had never heard of before. They had a MedSup product, but like their main product was this cancer insurance plan. He was captive. They did not let him sell over the phone. He was only face-to-face, and they would fly him to like 4 different states. They would pay for his airfare, and they'd drop him in the middle of a neighborhood, and he would cold knocking. That's what he did. And this dude was like a badass from what it sounds like. He had thousands and thousands of policies on the books for this cancer plan. And then he would, and like if MedSup came up, then great. And I was like, yeah, I was like,
talk about that if you want. If you want to talk about your MedSup plan, we can.
I guess if we have to, that was almost like the mentality. And I've never, ever seen a guy like this in my life. I've never seen a captive company that would fly a captive agent around to cold knock in neighborhoods. Wouldn't let him sell over the phone. It was so bizarre to me. I wanted to put this guy on display in my office.
On a museum.
And I stuff him.
Like this.
And I stuff him or something.
There should be a wax museum of rare insurance agents. we get our wax replicas made.
Now, I have no idea how much money this guy was making. I have no idea. I don't know enough about his situation to know for sure. If that was a good thing for him or not, but he was sure unique. He was fascinating. Never talked to anyone quite like this guy. I think that's an interesting idea. I think it could definitely be, because one thing that's nice about Medicare, if someone's already an existing client of yours, you can call them and cross-sell the Medicare later. You don't need permission to contact or anything like that. So that's always a really nice segue in, I suppose. I've always preached that if you're on a Medicare appointment or you're talking to somebody and you just for some reason can't help them, it's not a bad idea to try to get the DVH or the hospital indemnity or the cancer plan, because then you can call them later and there's no restrictions. They're in your book. I also think that a question that I get asked a lot from brand new agents, and I'm talking people, this conversation to me is for a brand newly licensed agent. Should they start selling Medicare or final expense? And should they try to do both at the same time? My thoughts on that would be, I've always been a big believer. Now I'm a little partial to this because this is how I got started. And man, I don't know, maybe it wasn't the right way. I mean, I can be open to that possibility. But when I got started, I did one line. I did Medicare, all things Medicare, and I didn't do anything else for the first 3 or 4 years. I barely sold any dental. I barely sold any hospital indemnity. It was MedSup, PDP, or MAPD, and it was that was what I wanted. That's what I wanted. That's all I cared about. No final expense. I don't remember if it was this episode. It was the last episode I shared that I got my life license in year 2. So I've always preached to agents that if it was me and I was them, there's so much they don't know. Medicare is the harder product to learn. There's way more to know. There's way more compliance. There's way more little things that you need to know about. You need to check formularies, networks, doctors, all this stuff. Election periods. Life insurance is not the same way. I think that it's better to pick one and go really hard into that for the first year or two. And then once you've really felt like you've mastered it, then come back and add the other later. But I do think long-term, they go well together. I think that I just feel like some agents can start off right off the bat when they're new and do both and do well. But I think most get overwhelmed and confused. So I just think they have a better chance of being successful if they just focus on one at the start.
I wouldn't recommend picking multiple lines of insurance. I mean, even something in the life, to give you an example, like in the life insurance space, like if I was training a new agent, I wouldn't even train them on multiple types of life insurance, like final expense and mortgage protection, which is simplified issue whole life, and term insurance. I wouldn't even try to give both of those to an agent to start. I would just give them just one type of insurance, one product, learn it, figure it out, get comfortable with it, get to the point where you really don't have to think to execute on it. Maybe that's 6 months for some agents. Maybe that's 2 years for other agents. I don't think there's necessarily like a specific timeline. You could say a year if you wanted to like put an average to it, I guess. But I totally agree with that. If you are going to cross-sell, which I am a fan of it, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. But if you are going to cross-sell, I think you want to master your core product before you really get into doing any cross-selling.
Yeah. I mean,
I also think I think there is an argument that agents would make. Some would say, I don't think you should cross-sell. What do you say to that person?
So there's two lines of thought. When I think about people that cross-sell and do it really effectively in their company, I think about like a Galen Hendricks, right? Friend of the show.
Number one. Yeah. Galen.
And
that's my first thought.
That's what I think about, right?
Yeah.
I also think about like a Go Medigap. Richard Cantu also, and Dante Cantu's company that he sold years ago to eHealth. Upon getting to know Dante, they sold Medicare supplements. They did, and I don't think they did any Medicare Advantage even. Like it was all Med Sup. I don't even think they sold dental. I think it was just Med Sup, but they did it better than anyone. They were just the like authority in that space, and they just did so great. eHealth came in and bought them because they wanted to increase their supplement side of their business. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Like I think you can present examples of both that did extremely well. I think there's probably more people that specialize than anything else, though. I think there's probably more success stories of a specialty success story than there is.
It's probably easier because basically what we're saying is, depending on the person, some people might have a more successful business by cross-selling, but there are going to be people who would actually do less business by cross-selling because they would be a better specialist.
Yes.
So I think the reality is it comes down to what type of person you are and how you operate. If you're trying to really just maximize individual contacts, then you probably are going to do better cross-selling. If you have a system in place, it's a machine. In goes the MedSup lead, out goes the MedSup app, and you don't want to do it, just work the machine that you have built. But I think it is kind of to each their own. I don't think there is a wrong or right answer. I think you really have to figure out what works best for you as an agent.
I think some agents are going to be able to get started and they can get life and health and they can get contracted for both and they can really do well doing both kind of right away. I think that they're the minority. I think the majority struggles to understand things at the beginning. I think the majority would be far better off just being like, okay, I'm going to sell Medicare Advantage and I'm going to freaking slay it, or whatever your thing is going to be. Like for Christian Brindle. Christian Brindle was a dynamite Medicare Advantage agent for the first 4 or 5 years and really did nothing else. Not that my company doesn't do Medicare Advantage now. It's still probably our main product. I'd say probably 80% of our book of business was Medicare Advantage. I sold MedSup too, but it was definitely like 70-30 or maybe even 80-20 some
Right.
years. And so just speaking from myself, and I think there's a lot more Christian Brindles out there than there are somebody that can come in and they can sell P&C, financial planning, annuities, all this stuff all at the same time. I don't think there's a lot of those out there. And I think that there's so many that try to do that. And it's actually the reason why they're not successful, because they can't just focus on something.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, there's a lot, like I'm thinking in my head, how you're structured is really everything. If you have like processes in place for cross-selling, like drip marketing systems, a CRM system that automates these types of outreaches, where essentially your book of business is reaching back out to you saying, hey, I want that dental plan, Christian. I want that cancer plan. That is such a different concept versus trying to get in a house, holding a direct mail lead, and I'm going to talk to you about cancer. And so there's so many different ways of doing it and how it works. Just saying, well, you should cross-sell or you shouldn't cross-sell, I think it really is kind of an oversimplification of this.
Yeah.
Whole.
I think for most, like if I were talking about, like, let's say the majority, the average person,
Right.
I think the way to go about it is to sell one line really well, become a master at it for 3 years, maybe more. And then bring in a cross-sell thing and learn it really well and cross-sell it to your book. And I think that's going to be the model that's going to make the most sense for most people. Like get 1,000 clients on the books for your prime thing, and then worry about that other stuff. Maybe get 500 clients on the books for your primary thing, whatever it is. And so that's kind of my viewpoint on it. I think that would make the most sense for most people, the average agent. But I think like Sally, who's had her license for 6 months, needs to pump the brakes a bit, because Sally's getting contracted for annuities. She's getting her P&C. She's studying for her P&C license. She's trying to sell final expense. She's trying to figure out Medicare telemarketing. And it's like, well, Sally, you're going to suck at everything, because you just can't, you don't give anything the 10,000 hours to be an expert.
Yep. Yeah, I think I've seen a lot of agents under that same concept. That same idea is they build out like a Medicare book of business, and then they kind of transition to annuities. And then maybe they're marketing for annuities, but they're really marketing and kind of mining their book of business for annuities. So they'll still write Medicare, but they kind of shifted what their focus is, and they're able to keep working with their existing clients. So it is kind of that I became an expert in this, and now I'm kind of shifting to become an expert in something else, but I'm still going to do my core service. I think that is actually a strong method to cross-selling, to earning more, to gaining more revenue off your existing clients. I think if I were to get, like if I'm selling insurance tomorrow, I really do love the idea of picking a line of insurance that's completely off the wall. I love the idea of I'm a dental insurance agent. That's all I do. I'm a dental insurance broker. That is all I do. I'm going to build the biggest dental insurance book of business the world's ever seen. And then I'm either going to cross-sell or refer everything out. I've heard stories of some people in these niches that have done incredibly well because it's not being marketed. People don't do it with cancer. They don't do it with dental. They don't do it with disability. Like all of these niches where there's a ton of money to be made, but the commission's a little smaller or the product's a little harder to sell. And so people just don't touch it.
I'm curious about something. I'd love to know how many dental plans someone would have to sell to make $500,000 a year, let's say.
Oh, good Lord.
So let's.
What's the average comp, like 10 or $15 a month? How much?
It's probably going to be anywhere between $100 to $150 a month. Let's say 125 for the first year.
I mean, I've heard some dental plans will pay as much as 50%.
Yeah, they exist. But it's 50% of maybe a $25 premium, right? Or like a $30 premium. Let's say 150. Let's shoot for the stars a little bit.
Let's say 150 annual commission.
Annual commission. And
annual
then
commission.
Annual commission. But renewals are like 3%, maybe 5% at the highest with a lot of these.
I didn't realize the renewals were so low.
But I'm just like, so it's mostly all new business, right?
Right.
Let's say 150. You have to put up 3,333 dental apps a year to make 500 grand a year.
What about cancer insurance though?
Cancer,
dental, that was more of an off the wall. Like dental would be a lot. There's just not enough money in, but cancer insurance and disability insurance.
So let's
short-term care insurance. There's some of these niches that there's more money in it.
Let's say the average cancer plan is, it really varies, it depends. It's going to vary, but like it's a percentage of the premium. Like Aetna's new plan is like 75% of the premium.
75% seems to be street that I've heard.
So let's say like if you're doing $100 a premium, you're walking away with $75, right? So let's say, and that's $75 a month. So we'll say $900 a year in that scenario, but that's if $100 premium. Like let's say the average, say it's like an average of $300 a year. That's pretty conservative, I think. In the same scenario, it's about 1,600 dental plans, or not dental plans, cancer plans a year, if it's that, give or take.
What's the renewal? But aren't the renewals better on cancer?
They are, but they're not like MedSup, MAPD. It does go down. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it might be like 10%, 8 to 10% or something like that in year 2. I liked it, but I do think there's a lot to be said with what you said in terms of like, no one else is probably going to lead with that. So you could probably write a tremendous amount,
Yeah.
If that's what you're leading with.
Your referral networks can get more easily established. Your overall cost to acquire a customer should be a lot lower once you have these referral networks established. If you really did specialize in some kind of little bit different, strange niche, think about it. You could potentially partner with people even in the Medicare space.
Mm-hmm.
You could be like, hey, all I write is short-term care. All I write is cancer. If you don't want to do it, that's fine, but just refer people to me. I won't touch your Medicare business. Like you really could get to that point where you're even networking with people in the space. I mean, obviously, I think the goal would be to cross-sell the Medicare policy or to cross-sell that final expense policy after the fact. So you might not want to do that, but it's a possibility. So here's another thing we haven't talked about, that we talked about off camera, that we need to talk about. Is it easier, if we're looking at life and health, is it easier to sell the final expense plan and then cross-sell Medicare? Or is it easier to sell Medicare and then cross-sell life? I've always been under the impression that it's easier to get the health first and then sell the life. But I think you've recently kind of had some different thoughts.
I've never been a great life agent. So let's just put that out there.
Yeah. Let the record show, worst life agent ever.
So take what I have to say with a grain of salt. But my impression lately is like, if you sell the life policy first or the final expense policy first, and then you go back and sell the Medicare, I think Medicare is such an easier conversation to have. I think like it's so much easier to sell, right? Like, the old cliche is like, final expense is the easiest to learn how to learn the product, but hardest to sell. And Medicare is hardest to learn, but easiest to sell. Yep. So I've always I've always thought that maybe it's easier to sell the health first. Until recently, I've started to change my mind on that. Maybe it's easier to sell the final expense first because it's the more difficult sale. And then also you have a permission to contact. They're in your book of business. You can call them back a week later and you can help them with their Medicare. And there's no compliance violations or anything like that because they're a client of yours. You can have that dialogue and that conversation. That's kind of nice. There's a lot of agents out there that are final expense first agents, and then they use their book to cross-sell Medicare and are really effective with it. Not to say that there's not agents that start with the health and the Medicare and cross-sell life later. I think it depends on who you talk to. I think it probably is all up dependent on the approach and how it's approached. I think it could be really effective either way. I know that's a politically correct answer, but
yeah, I think part of it too is like, are you going after Med Sup clients or are you going after Medicare Advantage clients? If you're going after Medicare Advantage clients, then final expense, because it's typically marketed to lower income demographics, you could argue that it's actually probably easier to sell final expense and then turn around and sell Medicare Advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're trying to sell Med Sup and you're trying to sell final expense and then sell Med Sup after the fact, I think it's going to be an uphill battle because most of these people are typically lower income. So they're not going to be the type of person that would qualify or want to purchase a Medicare supplement plan. So that's part of it. I think from a sales point of view, if you're a weaker salesperson, and I'm not trying to say that health agents are weaker or life agents are weaker. That's not what I'm trying to say here. Typically, I think life insurance is a more difficult sale. It's a more difficult transaction.
I 100% agree. I think that's spot on.
From that point of view, if you want to get the easier transaction done, because it's health insurance, it's easy to talk about. Everybody has some type of health insurance, right? Then being able to come in and say, hey, I helped you with that insurance. Why don't I help you with this life insurance too? That is an easier path, I think, for most agents versus selling the life insurance first and then backdooring Medicare that way. I think that for most agents, I think that's a harder route to take in general.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think
soft health insurance agents. Look at Christian. Look how soft he is.
I'm basically a ghost right now, guys. Like,
I'm gonna get canceled. I'm gonna get canceled by health agents, bro.
I'm beaming. Yeah, seriously. Like we're worried about me. We should start worrying about you.
I'm gonna get like a horse's head sent to me in the mail. It's like, we'll talk about Medicare agents.
You still think Medicare agents are soft?
Yeah. How soft do I look now, Glenn?
They send you like a burning bag of like marshmallows. Be like, this is what I think of softness.
How soft are these burning marshmallows?
The Arnold Schwarzenegger of Medicare agents shows up at your house. Oh, you think I'm soft?
I'm from Robot Patriot Insurance Group. I heard you called me soft.
I love it. I love it. So we're about the 30-minute mark on this episode. Any final thoughts on this topic?
I think the final thought I'd really want to share with you guys, if you made it to the end of this one, figure out what works best for you. And it's almost cliche to say that at this point, but I used to, as a newer agent, I used to think that there were like kind of these right and wrong ways of doing things. Market this way, don't market this way, get licensed in these states, don't get licensed in these states. This is how you cross-sell. This is what you don't. Figure out what works for you. What works for me might not work for you. What works for Christian might not work for me, might not work for you. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But you got to kind of have the self-awareness to know that, okay, this process is a good process for me, and this works well for me. And then if you can have that self-awareness, sky's the limit. So that's my final thoughts on today's episode.
I love it. Guys, my final thoughts would be, I think my biggest takeaway in this whole topic is like everything Glenn said, spot on. I think that most agents are going to struggle by trying to do too much.
Yeah.
And so I think for most new agents, 99 out of 100, I think your best thing to do in your first 12 to 24 months is pick a line, pick a product, go all in on it, and don't worry about anything else. And you can make a lot of money selling life. You can make a lot of money selling Medicare. They're just different, and they both have their strengths and weaknesses, positives and negatives. And so that just understand that, like there is such a thing as putting too much on your plate and having, and scooping some of it off. Like maybe you have too much mashed potatoes and not enough green beans. There's such a thing as addition by subtraction. You take Russell Westbrook off the Lakers and they start winning. God, Lakers fan.
Oh, boom! Roasted, Westbrook.
That would be my final thoughts. Westbrook.
Oh my gosh. Perfect. Perfection right there. Addition through subtraction. See ya, Westbrook. Freaking scrub.
Guys, drop your likes. I mean, and I'm serious. If you watch this video and you don't like it, you're the enemy of Taco Tuesday. So if we get like 200 views on this and 10 likes, 190 of you are just flat out the enemy.
We know who you are.
We know.
We're
we know.
tracking you.
You're probably soft ass Medicare agents. Just kidding. We love you guys.
We love you. We love you.
Please don't take our like away after I said that. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.